Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFurio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you so much for being here on the show, in the listening audience. It means a ton. It really does. And we've been doing this for 8 years, and I know this is a global audience. It's so cool to think about all the different coffee shops and types of cafes and service businesses, and wherever you are in coffee as a manager or a trainer, a barista, roaster, cafe. I really appreciate you, and tuning in means a lot, so thank you. I would encourage you to subscribe to the show. That's a great way to stay updated with new episode content. I do want to mention to you, of course, today's episode is sponsored by some great companies, two of them, in fact, one being Arto Brick, at Arto Brick on Instagram. Check them out there. Tiles, stonework, and hard surfaces for your cafe. And then you also have the Barista series from pacificfoodservice.com. That is a plant-based beverage phenom, the originals, and amazing product. So we're going to talk about those companies and where to get more information about their products later in the episode. But I also, before we start, want to mention, you can reach out to me directly if you have questions about stuff. If you have, just any kind of communication or feedback about these episodes. And especially, I want to hear from you if there's something that I can do to help you. One of the things that I do is consulting, coaching, and working one-on-one with companies, both large and small, people who are wanting to develop people-first systems, operations, have wonderful hospitality and quality to make a difference through their cafe business. And this is what drives me. It's what drives Keys to the Shop. And if you are thinking, we need a little assistance, we need a little help, we want to bring somebody in with a perspective on the industry, and then from an outside perspective on our business to help us get to that next level that our business wants to get to, right? And we have to figure out what the right thing is for you. That's what I love doing with my clients. So if you're a coffee shop owner and operator, and you're looking to bring in some help in the form of coaching and consulting, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode, I'm really excited to talk about something basic. It's basic, but it's not as basic as you might think in terms of how prevalent it is. And it's how we talk to people about coffee. It's how we have conversations about coffee with regular people. And we have a lot of coffee enthusiast people. We have a lot of coffee nerds, I guess you would say, prosumers. You could, but then most of our clients, most of our customers, I would say, in the coffee shop, they're just regular people that want a cup of coffee. And that's why I brought in today somebody whose company, Seven Sleepers Coffee Labs, is doing this work in people's kitchens, at their events, and providing these experiences with coffee with people and having these conversations, and basically meeting them where they are with coffee and helping them enjoy coffee even more. And I'm inspired by that kind of thing for sure. I think that's what coffee shops should be doing. We're talking with Matthew Bryce, who founded Seven Sleepers Coffee Labs, and he's a results-driven leader who has over a decade of experience in the coffee industry, enhancing customer experiences in retail settings, and food service operations, and in this iteration through what he does with consumers of coffee. He's a specialist in elevating the customer experience and optimizing processes and driving measurable improvements in sales, team productivity, and quality of engagement. What he does with his work for making coffee for you and your guests in your kitchen is the kind of thing that coffee shops, like I said, should be doing for their customers, where it puts the person themselves, the regular person, in a place of honoring them, and serving them instead of performing in the way that a lot of customers feel like they have to do when they're in a coffee shop. So today we're going to talk with Matthew about his ascension too, or a discovery and ascension in the world of coffee, back starting in the 90s all the way till today. So he's had quite a storied past in coffee with some really great players in the coffee industry, a lot of great professional experience outside the coffee industry. And then, doing what he does now, he's in a perfect position to really help people love coffee even more on their terms, which I think is refreshing. So we're going to talk all about that with Matthew today. So here now is my conversation with the founder of Seven Sleepers Coffee Labs, Matthew Bryce. Well, Matthew, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Yeah, it's fun to have know what we're going to talk about, because I think the customer and the consumer market has just exploded in recent years, and it's not really showing any signs of stopping. Manufacturers are making home equipment at such high quality levels, and marketing is just doing what marketing does, and coffee shops keep opening locations. So people are being educated in coffee, except there's so much stuff out there, and operators of businesses and services like yourself uh, help them kind of make sense of things, and we say on the show, achieve success with your coffee at home. So it's pretty cool to get to dive into this. But before you started doing your work with Seven Sleepers, you were in the coffee industry. To talk a little bit about how you actually just made your way into the world of coffee.
Yeah, no, I came into the world of coffee through Starbucks. I was not a coffee drinker at the time. I was just looking for a place to study, and I started ordering coffee drinks and got a job with them. And that job got the interest of a friend of mine who had previously managed a Starbucks but was opening up a coffee shop in a nearby town to here, actually. Uh, he opened up a cafe called Brew Mountain Coffee
Hmm.
back in, it was either like 1999 or 2000 or something like that. And he was trying to be like a multi roaster like cafe. So he was working with Intelligentsia at the time and 49th Parallel, and was getting coffees from Novo out of Colorado.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just trying various other things, and dabbling with roasting. And that is really where my interest was piqued and started to grow. And I actually wasn't able to stay with him for very long. He ended up closing shop after a couple of years, and I moved on. I was in retail at the time, and I got sick. And when I was kind of making my way back into being able to go back to work, I really missed coffee. And so he helped me to get connected with some folks in DC, and I started working for Baked and Wired way back in like 2010. And
Okay.
then eventually Peregrine Espresso
Oh yeah.
right after that. So, and I was there for like six years, I think, something like that, before I made my way out to the West Coast.
Yeah. Shout out to Peregrine and Small Plains.
Yeah.
So out in the West Coast, did that? So yeah, in all your experience in coffee, you had traversed coffee at the beginning and then the end, or the peak at which everybody was just kind of like doing the ultimate third wave stuff in the 2012
Yeah.
era, right? So you had a good view of coffee from a nice cross section of understanding of what the industry was doing at that time. What was your overall perception of how coffee was being perceived by the customers that they were, on paper at least, trying to attract into their cafes? How was this playing in for customers?
I mean, customers usually came in, they were already, fans of coffee. They were looking for a good cup. Um, at the time, prices had really started to blow up. And
Hmm.
so they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. I have to pay $2 for a cup of coffee? Like what happened to my 75-cent cup? Like why am I paying
Yeah.
$2? And so that was a good conversation, to have. You know, yeah, lattes. I remember lattes were like $3, 3.50, something like that. And they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Tell me, what's so good about this coffee that makes it $3.50?
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of fun, just engaging people. It was you did kind of have to know what you were talking about, right, to talk to them because uh, everyone already knew what they wanted, right? This is what we were talking about in the beginning. I already knew what they wanted. You just kind of had to like now bring them along into what was going on, and they would then make the decision whether or not they were going to go back to that or if they were going to go, up the road to the next cafe looking for the 75-cent cup. Go from there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't
That's
know
an
if I answered your
interesting.
question though.
No, you did. Yeah, I feel like people were. Yeah, yeah, I can confirm this. There's a skeptical nature around something that we're trying to say. You have to pay a lot of money for this, and by the way, it's a little bit more precious in the equipment that we've got and everything else. We're trying to, reinvent coffee in some fashion, and people. You said, they have their tastes developed. And for coffee, you want to attract coffee drinkers. It's rare that a coffee shop would just convince somebody to love coffee for the first time, so you're attracting people who already have a taste. It's hard to think in ways that is actually that's a legitimate taste that they have. It's almost like, well, you may have developed a taste, but allow us to show you how you're wrong. Sometimes I got the feeling that maybe we were trying to convince people against their will or their developed taste in some fashion.
I think a lot of the fashionable coffee profiles were starting to sort of peek their head. Back then, Peregrine was a counterculture account, and they had a coffee that they used called Toscano, and it had like a very classic, like it's what you think of coffee when you think of coffee, like or
Yeah,
at least for that time it was,
yeah,
I don't think they do that, or they've renamed it or something like that since then. But yeah, I think people were scandalized a little bit, because suddenly you had Apollo, which was their like 100% Ethiopian espresso that was out there, and they're like, this tastes like bright head beams in my eyes. They're like, well, I don't like it. And you're like, no, it's good. Let me tell you why. Yeah, and you kind of have to
yeah.
have a conversation where you're hoping you'd convince them, and it was good because they it had to be a conversation. You couldn't just like force it on anybody, and you had to have a few options there. It was certainly a good time, and I actually don't think it's changed all that much today. We talked about, you asked me how West Virginia was treating me, and it's been treating me well. And when I got here, I did what coffee people do. I went around and I was looking at all the coffee shops, and a lot of them are still like those Toscano style cafes, where they're like looking for that sort of southern Italian blend, that's going to be like full bodied and robust and have all these very rich deep connotations to them. That is great, you know. And I remember, yeah, just I feel like most of my time in coffee is talking to people who are looking for that still, even though there's like this massive breadth of flavor profiles out there, cotton candy and lemon and watermelon and I don't know, I cereal milk and all these different things. you know the coffee sort of, it's bigger than us. It'll be here when we're gone, and people will still be looking for that same sort of just like very classic cup, I think.
What does that tell us about our? It says something about us that that classic cup is always this ubiquitous. It's this ubiquitous presence. People are looking for it. We're exploring coffee so much to try to find these other flavors, but this is maybe this is a question more about what makes a consumer love coffee. Is it learning about coffee based on what the baristas discovered about what they love, or is it finding coffee that they love that more closely matches what they've already kind of imprinted in their mind is a good cup of coffee?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's that's not one we'll answer today. But yeah, maybe a little of both, like something, because I know for me, it was more than just like the coffee beverage, that drew me into coffee. I was really interested in that third space. uh I don't, it's not called third space anymore, is it? Or have we circled back around to third space?
Yeah, I think third place, third space. I hear people using the terminology still. It's not as popular as it once was, I don't think, but I hear it every now and again.
But having that space, kind of like your old friends episode, where everyone's just like chilling, having their coffees and chatting about their day, or they're having dates or whatever it is. That was actually what brought me in, and it was sort of secondary for me to learn about coffee and learn about, its various offerings. So I don't know. I'm sure it's a million things that bring people in. I think a lot of that marketing that we see that refers to the gathering element and the traditional elements, and even sometimes the historical elements. I think those really draw people in a lot, because we look for that, especially today. We look for things with substance, and when the coffee's good, it just it helps us to double down a little bit, on that, and really feel like we found something, that can witness
Yeah.
to what we're looking for.
Yeah, it kind of greases the wheels of the other reason that we're there. And it's not necessarily the coffee. So, in a way, you were kind of a consumer in the mentality that you had in coffee, because that's why they go. They go for the same thing. You learned about the coffee because you were doing it professionally. And it obviously is something you wanted to affect and promote and be a part of providing. The customer coming into a coffee shop wanting to also be a part of that communal experience, that is through coffee, is very similar to that. So they may learn about coffee a little bit in the process, but by and large, it feels like they're there for the vibes. They're there for the other stuff, and we teach them, I guess, about coffee. But yeah, it does feel like there's reasons other to our chagrin, right? There's other reasons than coffee, and our thing is to be coffee professionals. Their thing is like to drink the coffee and to enjoy the coffee.
Yeah,
Not necessarily to learn about it, but here's where it gets weird, because people do want to learn about it. There's olive oil subscriptions, there's wine, there's all these other people really like to know about it. And so I guess you just have to read people and know, like, how much do you want to know and what's the best thing for somebody to know.
yeah. Most of those conversations I remember having because somebody had a moment, where a drink just came out really nice. They're like, "How do you do that?" And you're just like, "I don't know." Like, it's hopefully they all come out that good. If they didn't, I'm sorry. We could talk about the process, and then usually, yeah, I think just the revelation of the process existing, and that the drink didn't always just like exist there, waiting for them, sort of pulls them in a little bit. And then you can have more conversation, or maybe you can encourage them to try other things so that they can relive that experience a little bit, in new and exciting ways. But again, yeah, it's different for everybody. I remember for me, coming out of, like I said, the dark roast world. Actually, my very first coffee I had, I was in college, and it was student union coffee from urns that I guarantee you were never cleaned. And like, I remember thinking like, it's so bad, and I thought like, I'll just put some milk in it, I'll put a little sugar in it, and it made it worse. I was like, how's it worse? It was so bad. And I went back, and my buddy, the guy who opened up the specialty coffee shop, he made me a cup of coffee one time. It was a French press of a coffee. I don't know if you remember. It's not around anymore. The Misty Valley coffee.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So that was the one. That was the one. I was like, how is this? There was a comedian. He used to make this these silly videos, and he had a video where he made his brother Kool-Aid in a like coffee urn, a Mr. Coffee Maker, and he's like, "Brother,
Yeah.
drink my hot Kool-Aid."
Oh yeah.
Like, his brother didn't want to do it, but he was like, "Oh yeah, it's pretty good." Um,
I
I
remember
feel like
that guy.
I lived that, because it was just like I went from disgusting, student union coffee to drinking what at the time to me was like a hot Kool-Aid.
Nice.
I was like, this is crazy. Tell me more. How'd you do this?
You literally drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
So you came into coffee, learned about coffee, worked in coffee, kind of it just became a coffee professional, from this moment. But then was it immediately upon entering the West Coast, or how soon thereafter did you start to kind of feel like you wanted to bring a little bit more of this world into people's kitchens, like consumers, and working with them for helping them experience coffee and to greater depth and greater success?
No, it was while I was still in DC. Um,
Mm,
when I was at Peregrine, Ryan was looking for opportunities to expand some of our offerings and to provide classes for home baristas, and we worked as a group, all the trainers, to put together an espresso course and a brewed coffee course, and they were sort of just like general surveys of each, and you can go deeper if you wanted to, and those are great. Those are so fun to put together. I had a lot of fun because it was different. When you're working in the shop and you're putting together training for a shop, and for the most part, it's just SOPs. It's a little bit different, for when you're at home and you're like, hey, like let's talk about your kitchen setup. Let's talk about like what you care about, in your home. Because it's not the same as pumping out 200 shots, or like 20 drinks, in a row, all hand pours. And so, yeah, I think maybe at first it was the novelty, but then it was the engagement of working with people who, yeah, wanted to do what I did, but in their homes, that kind of got me like more interested. And the fact that there was such a cry, for people, because to me it was a little bit of a shame that here we were with what I would consider like very precious coffees, that people were putting years and years and years of their life into, and we're selling them to the public who don't know what to do with them, and it's just like, like, let me show you. Like, let me help you with that because they cared. That's why they bought it, and maybe they don't know all that stuff, but they cared and they bought it, and it belongs to them now, and it belongs to them so that they can share it, or so that they can enjoy it, or so that they can have it, in their homes as part of something like bigger. So it really, I'm kind of getting lost in the richness of it all, but I think maybe to answer your question, that yeah, there was a need there that was important, and it wasn't just a matter of oh, here's this additional income stream. It's like you have a desire to put this thing together that would otherwise be a waste, and so for me it just made sense. It's like, yeah, I know how to do that. Like, I do it at home, you know
yeah.
I I get made fun of actually because I do it at home with coffee equipment I bought way back in 1999. you know uh, so I think that really propelled me forward. When I moved to the West Coast, I leaned into that a lot. I went to go work for Clatch Coffee, and they were opening up. They were involved at the time in a really aggressive like opening of. I think they opened like 5 or 6 shops, like within a year or two, and I was working at their beach shop there in Redondo. That was one of the things that we wanted to really offer from the get go, was people being able to come in and talk to us about brewing coffee and having coffee classes available. And we did a lot of even just fun free stuff. People were able to go to the library, and I would sit there and do like a little like Chemex demonstration, and like, it was fun.
I like the idea of, I know how to do this. Let me help you. And it's a help. It's not a it's not a lesson of let me show you how you're wrong. It's more, let's just if your coffee can be a little bit better, you've tasted it in our cafe, and people want to do the same kind of thing at home, which means you're going to sell more coffee. Probably both places too. I mean, especially if you're a roaster retailer, this is the kind of stuff that you really want your customers to, have is a setup and tools and knowledge to do well with the coffee at home. So, what were the things that you were constantly kind of seeing people go like, oh yeah, that makes a big difference? Like when you first started getting into people's kitchens and diagnosing or demonstrating, and what were those aha moments for consumers that really made a difference for them?
Usually it was, the things that we kind of take for granted now. Things that I actually remember are still relatively new. I remember probably all the way up until like 2010, 2012, cafes weren't measuring coffee,
Mm,
or if they were using like a measuring cup, right? They weren't actually like weighing it out. I think, or at least not on a wide scale. So using tools like scales and timers and thermometers, and just kind of like showing them what they were looking for. A lot of the work I would do with people in their homes was just tasting, just be like, hey, like, let me make you a cappuccino, whatever your favorite drink is, let me make it for you, and we'll talk about what I did, and we'll talk about how you can replicate it. And then you can, let me know what else you want. Sometimes they'd be like, oh, this is good, but I usually actually like this drink instead. And that would open up like so much more for us. A lot of times, yeah, I would run into stuff that, frankly, I wasn't within my tastes, and that was great because it gave me an opportunity to dial into some like what people wanted, and to be able to work with them according to their value system. And that really changed things for me a lot, because it really diversified coffee a bit, and I think opens it up, at least for me, where coffee's no longer like, this is what coffee is, this is how you're supposed to make coffee. Like, obviously coffee has rules. Obviously, coffee works a certain way, but if somebody doesn't like it your way, you have to make it their way. you know
yeah,
and so, yeah, a lot of the times that's what I was doing, was kind of like talking about coffee how I knew it, talking about coffee how I could like present it, and then them kind of like coming back with, this is great, or this is great, but, and then we would kind of like figure out, all right, like, let's do that. And all the basics were still there, taste balance, body, aroma. You were just kind of doing it a different way now, and
yeah.
that was really fun for me, because it brought me back to being the student again, in a lot of ways. And then it became a conversation, instead of just me being like, hey, I'm an authority, like, let me show you how it's done.
So you were a student of them.
Yeah, it became more friendly, I think, not as much of a studious pursuit, as much as it was like, hey, like, it wasn't not true to the original, like, hey, let me help you, right? It was more true to the original, let me help you, because it didn't have any like prescribed notions, of what I was going to do. It was always just like, what do you want? Like, how do you like, what's your best coffee like? Somebody would hand me, a dark roast from Blue Bottle, and it was great. Again, not a coffee I would pick for myself, but it was a coffee that they really wanted to dial in for espresso, and I was like, let's do it, and we dialed it in. It was beautiful, tasted like s'mores, and we were able to make a few drinks, and we had a lot of fun, and then there was like some stuff that I had that was more, yeah, like green, gardeny tasting, and again, not my bag of tea. But it was fun. We kept to a lot of the things that give you the basic definition, but you get to work with them on their vision. You get to work with them on the pattern, that they're looking to replicate, and you get to work with them on like all the things that enable them to do it over and over and over again. Like they want to serve their guests. Oh, I really want to serve my guests a cappuccino when they come over this weekend. Like, can you help me with that? Oh yeah, of course. Let's get to it. And it was whatever. It was really fun.
Hey everyone, it's Chris. We'll be right back to our conversation with Matthew Bryce of Seven Sleepers Coffee Labs, but I did want to talk to you today about our sponsors. First of all, go to Instagram and follow Arto Brick, at Arto Brick, A-R-T-O Brick. This is a place that out of Los Angeles, California, that is a family-run and operated tile, stonework, and hard surfaces company that provides unique materials for your unique cafe. Armin, he and his brother Vod, they run this. Their father Arto started it, and it's all made there in Los Angeles. Armin, wants to be in conversation with you about what you need. So reach out, DM them on Instagram at Arto Brick. If you want to go to their website, it's arto.com. But your cafe needs something that is, tactile. It's a feel. Like, we are purveyors of coffee, yes, but also of an experience. That's what they love doing and being a part of. So check them out over on Instagram at Arto Brick. Now, also, we are sponsored today by the folks over at the Pacific Barista Series. You can find all the information you need about that at pacificfoodservice.com. You can get samples from that page and then try it for yourself. This is the original, and it is preferred by professional baristas all over the world because it stands up to the heat from steaming, provides great texture for latte art and just a good textured beverage. And also, the product keeps the focus of the flavor on the coffee. It's not overwhelming. It's balanced, right? We love these things about a plant-based beverage. So check out the Pacific Barista Series. Again, pacificfoodservice.com. If you're looking for the best, check out the Barista Series from Pacific. Now, let's get back to our conversation with Matthew Bryce. It feels like there's this different dynamic because you're starting from a place of you're the learner. And when you go to a coffee shop as a consumer, it's the reverse. The entity of the coffee shop is giving you a menu. This is what's available. This is how it tastes. These are your options, and it is an authoritative presence. And for a lot of reasons, I guess it probably should be. But it feels like we would do well to take a page out of that playbook and disarm people from their defense mechanisms by asking them the questions like, okay, well, what's a good coffee for you? What's your taste like? And maybe if it's not our taste, we're okay with that, but we can more closely match them across the counter. Even if our staff were a little bit more curious about the existing taste of a consumer, that might do a lot more for helping people enjoy themselves and maybe enjoy coffee a lot more, because maybe they have these questions for you because they're not being answered in the coffee shops where they go.
Yeah, it's possible. Well, I mean, it's probable, right? I mean, anytime you get a job in a new coffee shop, you're a little bit indoctrinated into that coffee shop, and then your job is to sort of indoctrinate from there. But a lot of professional coffee people, they still get excited. I remember when coffees were coming out of Congo again, like a few years back, and folks were like, yes, please, or even more recently, we started getting more accessible coffees coming out of like Yemen, and coffees coming out of India, and Sumatra kind of like came back into scope as like oh yeah, like this doesn't taste like dust, like this tastes like really good. Well, because, like, no offense, Sumatra, but like for a long time, Sumatran coffee was just like really not, it wasn't respected. And I think in recent years that's kind of changed a little bit. And I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe that'll continue. I know a lot of folks are getting more interested in other coffee selections that are out there right now. So
yeah, it's good to be excited. And in the Sumatra, but I mean, for a long time, is as maybe unpopular as it was with coffee professionals, it's very popular with consumers because it's
absolutely, yeah.
It's got that coffee flavor. It's a pungent profile that we're used to thinking of. And, when you're working with somebody who says, I love this kind of coffee, how do you, okay, let me ask you this. How do you stay excited about coffee while also learning how to be excited about helping somebody love coffee themselves, even though it's a coffee you're not excited about? Give me your take on that, because there's coffees you love that your clients, people who hire you, you're like, I would never drink that coffee that they love. I'm not excited about that coffee, but I'm excited for them to love coffee. There's like the professional version of you that has to take a back seat to the maybe the altruistic coffee person that what does that look like for you?
It's funny that you ask. I drink a lot of coffee at home. I mostly drink coffee at home. I don't go out to drink coffee as much as I used to. I'm trying to change that because, I am in a new space and I am trying to learn more of what the coffee community is like around me. But yeah, sometimes I just put on a different hat and I do a different thing. My wife and I will run out of coffee sometimes. And we're like, well, I don't want to spend whatever you're going to spend on your next bag, to for the interim. So we started buying instant coffee and trying to dial in our instant coffee at home. And that was super fun because we did it and we got like coffee that we really enjoy drinking. And it kind of surprised us, because I remember making jokes about how like I'd been ruined, like going to work in coffee shops and I'd been ruined and I couldn't ever go and drink coffee in these other places, and then I started to drink coffee that I wouldn't drink and I was like, oh, like this is great. I have been an idiot. I needed to do this earlier because now I feel like I can share that with people because not everybody's going to go out and buy all the beakers and the grinders and the kettles, and they want just a cup of coffee. That there was a Seinfeld episode one time where I don't know if you ever watched that show, but there's a show where this guy comes into his house. I don't remember the whole like setup for it, but he's like, "You got a cup of coffee?" And he's like, "No, I don't."
Yeah, you
And
don't
he's
drink
like,
coffee? How about instant coffee?
No, I don't have.
You don't have any instant coffee?
Well, I don't normally.
Who doesn't have instant coffee?
I don't.
You buy a jar of Folgers Crystals, you put it in a cupboard, you forget about it. And later on, when you need it, it's there. It lasts forever. It's freeze-dried. Freeze-dried crystals.
Really, I'll have to remember that.
and here I am, like dialing in instant coffee now, like for myself, just to like for fun. And I have like 5 or 6 different instant coffees now. They're not cafe coffees; they're like grocery store coffees, but dialing them in and trying to make them taste good, and then being able to share that with people who, yeah, don't want to like spend money on coffee equipment, who just want a good cup of coffee, and who are like happy to bust out their Folgers. And I'm not, I don't work for Folgers. I'm not advocating for Folgers, but I'm totally there to help somebody who wants their Folgers cup of coffee to like make a good cup of Folgers coffee, and if I'm not, then like, should I be doing this? Uh,
Hmm.
I love coffee and I love people and I love the engagement that coffee brings with people, and I'm involved in it. And if I can't do it at as many levels as possible, to through as many doors as possible, then like, do I love it? I don't, that's a good question. I think, but it's really been exciting for me, I guess, to kind of involve myself in coffee in various ways, and to find coffees that like, I go to my folks' place and they have a coffee maker. I don't particularly like it, but I've been able to fiddle with it a little bit and get something out of it that I like a little bit better. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. Like now I can share this with my friends who use this coffee maker. I don't use it, but I'm there for it now. If they ask.
Yeah. What would you say to your staff if you opened a coffee shop when they were talking to customers across the bar? Which coffee should I get? What's the kind of instruction that you would give to a staff member in a professional setting so that we can facilitate people's enjoyment of coffee no matter their taste of coffee? Maybe it's your vision of what should potentially change or how we should evolve our conversation with consumers in a professional setting.
I would probably just draw from my own experience. a customer comes in, asks me, what should I get? I'm like, what do you drink where you came from? Like the last coffee you drank there, like let's try it here.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll do the Pepsi challenge. If you like it better, like why don't you come on back? We'll try something else. I like to get people to start from a place of comfort and then yeah, kind of like walk them through the rest of the menu if they're willing. Sometimes people come in, they're like, I'm a cappuccino guy, give me the cappuccino, or I'm an espresso guy, give me the espresso. That's great too. I don't know. Most places got more than two drinks on their menu. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes for, I think, a more sustainable industry. If we are really concerned about having people be long-term dedicated to our brand, or just a being coffee drinkers in general, keep on buying coffee, keep on drinking coffee, maybe they're going to be more open to coffees that are more ethically sourced, and maybe because of that they're more expensive. But if you started the conversation giving affirmation to them, it really feels like, who, me, little old me? I'm not a coffee professional. Why are you asking me? It feels like almost awkward at this point in specialty coffee to have that conversation. Like, you're not expecting it. You're kind of expecting a lecture a little bit, if not directly, then indirectly. So I really like that. And, it feels like your service with Seven Sleepers allows people, it fills this gap in the professional setting. There's only so many conversations we can have, but it almost feels like these are more deep conversations you're having with people. You're invited into their home. That's pretty intense.
it is. No, actually, yeah, I started it back in 2022. So, like, I was still going in and, we were having conversations about, masking, and we were trying to, do all the things to make sure that, folks felt safe. And so it was a privilege for sure to be starting around that time and to be invited.
And it speaks a lot to your ability to give people information that they'll probably take more seriously, because if they invite you into their home, it's their own ground. It's different than when you're in a cafe. I'm sure as good as I think, the folks at Peregrine are, and every other coffee shop that does a good job, people put themselves in a position of stress when they're in the line and they're looking at the labels and they're like, oh, it's my turn, step forward, say your order, don't say it too fast. Oh, they're going to have more questions. It's like a pressure situation when you're in a coffee shop. But when you've got the coffee professional in your house, it feels like they're going to confide in you a little bit more than they would the average barista. So it's like, I don't know if there's customer confessionals and things that maybe they would never have said to a coffee shop, but they've confided in you. But maybe you could share with us some of the stuff that has been revealed to you by consumers that maybe they would never have shared with their coffee shop, but they'll tell you because, I mean, you're the one there in their house.
I think people have been shamed a lot.
Mm.
Oftentimes people will say, like, oh, you're the coffee expert, little old me, I like my mocha, and I'm like, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, maybe to harken back to the idea that, coffee's been around a lot longer than we have, the mocha's
Mm.
been around a lot longer than we have, the mocha's great. I got nothing against the mocha. But like, yeah, people have felt just really judged and they feel belittled. And I know I know cafes have really kind of shifted away, or at least have made a big effort to shift away from the mentality of the customer is not right. The customer needs to be told, but they still feel it. It's still there. And I think that's sad. I don't know why it's there personally. I don't work in cafes right now, so it's it's hard to pinpoint. But I
Well,
think
that's revealing. Yeah.
yeah, I think folks just need to, like I said, at least from my experience and something that I wanted to do. I don't want to speak into anybody else's life who does this or who doesn't want to hear it, but you got to remember that if it's their taste, then it's dialed in. Like, maybe as coffee professionals, we can maybe we could do. I remember there was a lot of programs. I don't know if it's still around, but like the whole like barista swap, scenario where you go to work at another cafe for a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe we could do more of that. Where suddenly you have to be like taught to make coffee. The way they do it up the street. It's not the way you do it. Maybe you judge it. Maybe you have a lot of thoughts about it. Maybe you don't judge it. Maybe you're like really excited about it. Maybe it teaches you something. But
yeah, expand your horizons a little bit.
Something to help us expand our horizons. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good word, because we scale our businesses, and we've been fond on the show lately of talking about how like we learn a lot about coffee and we don't learn very much about people. And it's maybe time to balance that a little bit, study the customer a little, and give them some credit for being reasonable individuals with, I like what you said, the taste is dialed in, and we can give them affirmation in that. It feels sorely needed today, especially when we're talking about the forced, more money for coffee. The prices are going up, and now we've got to really serve people really well. So I'm glad that you're bringing this perspective to people in their kitchens and their, events and things like that. And we need more of this kind of mindset. It's kind of a people first mindset. So thank you for kind of chatting with me about this. This has been fun, and I would encourage people to kind of think about some of the stuff you've said. As always, we say just meditate on these things a little bit so that it can, get into your system and into your practices. But thank you. And where can we learn more about what you're up to and Seven Sleepers and beyond?
Oh man. Well, I have a social media presence on Instagram. Seven Sleepers is on Instagram, and an email. I've kind of slowed down a little bit since I moved, but yeah, folks can message me there. It's just, I think Seven Sleepers or SS Coffee Labs is the email. It's at Gmail. Pretty easy, but yeah, I'm still waiting to see how things kind of develop here. Since being back in the area, it's been interesting. I moved into West Virginia, and I was working in Virginia, and I was trying to get some coffee stuff up and running here in town. And I have had some really great conversations with people. I'm looking forward to working more with them. But I'm a small baby in a new world out in West Virginia, so it's just a matter of time, really.
Good. Well, I know that, small beginnings have big impact often, right? So I appreciate you, Matthew. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate your time today.
Okay, everyone. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. It was definitely one of these conversations that makes me think, it's so simple the way that we should be operating in cafes. It's not, we tend to complicate it. It's a simple conversation. It's communal. I like what Matthew was talking about, how he was attracted to the coffee shop industry, like the cafe space, because of the communal nature of it. And so how can we recapture that? How can we serve the needs of our customers? I guess we would really need to ask them, and we would need to be talking to them and allow enough space in architect spaces and focus ourselves on serving them well and including them in the conversation. We talk about hospitality being acknowledging, welcoming, and including people, meeting them where they are. And maybe we're not supposed to preach that much to them about the things that they should love, and we should start with what they do love and affirm them in these tastes and bring them on the journey with us. It's like that whole thing is a conversation over years. It takes place over years. Maybe they'll be open to other things. Maybe they'll pay more for coffee that's more ethically sourced because they weren't made to feel a little bit beat down by guilt or not being sure in the coffee shop. So this was a refreshing conversation to just reaffirm for us, hey, we're in the people business and we need to include people in our business if that's the case. And so Matthew, thank you for joining me on the show. If you want more information about Seven Sleepers Coffee Labs, I think the best place to do that is to follow on Instagram, SS for Seven Sleepers Coffee Labs on Instagram. And you can find that on the show notes as well. And by the way, there's more information in the show notes than you realize. I don't know if anybody checks show notes anymore, but I always link to episodes that are related to what we just talked about. So if you want to deep dive into more related topics, there's always a list there. There's a link you can click on also to set up a discovery call for consulting and coaching with Keys to the Shop. So go ahead and check that out as well. And just reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. I would love to hear from you. Just tell me how your life is in coffee, and maybe there's something I can do to help you. Maybe you just have a question, and it's not like everything is consulting and coaching. I like having conversations with people, and this is how we affect change. It's one conversation at a time. So reach out, let's talk. So now that's it. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, follow, etc. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.